Imagine being the most powerful king on earth and, in the blink of an eye, losing everything, even your sanity. Nebuchadnezzar, the great king of Babylon, learned the hard way that pride before God comes at a steep price. In this video, we'll explore how God used this radical experience to transform the heart of an arrogant man into a true testimony of faith. Stay with us and see how this powerful lesson can impact your life today. Friends, let's embark together on a journey through the story of one of the most fascinating and iconic kings of antiquity, Nebuchadnezzar II. He was not just a king, he was an empire builder, a dream architect who still amazes us today with his grand achievements. But what can we really learn from his story? Nebuchadnezzar elevated the Neo-Babylonian Empire to its peak. Under his rule, Babylon grew not only in power but also in splendor. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, are attributed to him. Imagine, for a moment, walking among those high walls adorned with lush gardens, a true wonder sprouting in the arid heart of the desert. But why did Nebuchadnezzar go to such lengths to build such wonders? I wonder, and I invite you to reflect with me, were his constructions an attempt to reach God, to touch the divine by building towers that pierce the skies? Or was it a reflection of his quest for immortality, a legacy of stone and flora to echo through the ages? Each brick, each garden planted, was not just a demonstration of power, but also a silent cry for eternal recognition. This king, so powerful and visionary, teaches us a crucial lesson. No matter how much we build empires or erect monuments, our true greatness is revealed in the reasons why we build, in what these efforts say about who we are and what we value. How do you, my brothers and sisters, choose to build your lives? What legacy do you intend to leave, and how do you seek your own encounter with the divine? As we reflect on this, let us remember that even the greatest empires face the test of time, and even Nebuchadnezzar saw his realm surpassed by the emerging Persian Empire. So, the real question that should echo in our hearts today is, what remains when our hanging gardens and our walls fall? This is a powerful reflection that will guide us during our journey through the scriptures, as we seek not just to understand history, but to draw from it the eternal values of faith, hope, and renewal. Let's discover these profound truths together, hidden in the pages of our sacred history. Today, we continue our exploration of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, this time focusing more closely on his military conquests. It is through the battles and expansions of this king that we begin to see a stark contrast between human glory and divine designs. But what do these conquests truly mean for us today? Nebuchadnezzar didn't just inherit an empire from his father Nabopolassar, he expanded it with formidable force and determination. Regions like Palestine, Syria, and, of course, the vast Mesopotamia fell under his dominion. But of all his conquests, the one that resonates most through the scriptures and history is the destruction of Jerusalem. The Jewish temple, a symbol of God's presence and promise to his people, was reduced to rubble. The Jews were taken captive, scattered, and forced to live far from their homeland. Can you imagine the pain and despair of being torn from your land, seeing your most sacred place destroyed? In the book of Jeremiah, we find prophecies that anticipated these events, reflecting not only divine punishment for Israel's infidelity but also God's sovereignty over the kingdoms of the earth. Jeremiah 25 verse 9 refers to Nebuchadnezzar as God's servant, used to execute his judgment. Isn't it fascinating how, even in acts of conquest and destruction, God's designs can be discerned? As we consider these conquests, it's important to reflect on the motivations behind our own battles and conquests. Are we fighting for what glorifies God, or for our own ambitions and desires for power? And more, how do we respond to adversities and conquests in our lives? Are they opportunities to grow in faith and dependence on God, or moments of estrangement and rebellion? The lessons we draw from the biblical stories of kings like Nebuchadnezzar are more than historical, they are deeply spiritual and personal. May we seek in each challenge and victory, divine guidance and the strength to remain faithful to his purposes. Let's meditate on this together and seek the wisdom that can only be found in our faith and unwavering trust in the God who governs all things. Moving forward in our journey through the narratives of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, we come to a story of faith and divine providence at the heart of this empire, the story of Daniel. Taken captive to Babylon after the conquest of Jerusalem, Daniel stands out as a vibrant example of how to maintain faith under adverse circumstances. But what can we learn from Daniel's trajectory at Nebuchadnezzar's court? Daniel was not just another prisoner. He was chosen to serve at the king's court because of his wisdom and knowledge. The Bible tells us that, despite being in a foreign land, Daniel remained faithful to God's precepts, refusing to defile himself with the king's food and drink. This act of faith is a profound lesson in integrity and commitment to divine principles. Have you ever wondered how you would maintain your faith if you were in an environment completely opposite to your beliefs? The true test came when Nebuchadnezzar had a disturbing dream that none of his wise men could interpret. Daniel, with God's help, not only interpreted the dream but also revealed to the king God's plans for the future of world empires. This moment is one of the most dramatic and revealing in the book of Daniel, showing how God can use adverse circumstances to exalt his will and purposes. Considering Daniel's position at court, we can't help but admire his courage and wisdom. He served not just the king but stood as a servant of God, influencing the Babylonian court with his unwavering faith. In Daniel 2 verse 47, Nebuchadnezzar himself acknowledges, "Truly, your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery." So, my brothers and sisters, how can we apply Daniel's example to our lives? In environments that challenge our faith, are we willing to stand firm like Daniel? Moreover, how can we use our positions, whether at work or in our communities, to be witnesses of faith and integrity? Reflecting on Daniel invites us to consider how our own actions and decisions can serve as a testimony in a world that often seems unaware of God. May Daniel's story inspire us to seek divine wisdom and live a life that honors the Lord, even amidst empires and colossal challenges. Let's together seek that strength and direction, remembering that God is always by our side, revealing mysteries and guiding our paths. We continue our exploration of the interactions between Daniel and King Nebuchadnezzar, this time focusing on another dramatic moment that reinforces God's sovereignty even in the highest echelons of human power. But what does this second disturbing dream reveal, not just about Nebuchadnezzar, but also about all of our hearts? Nebuchadnezzar, having already witnessed Daniel's divine ability to interpret dreams, is once again plagued by a dream that none of his wise men could explain. The situation reminds us that no matter how much wisdom or power we accumulate, there are moments in our lives when only divine intervention can provide the clarity we seek. How often do we find ourselves, like Nebuchadnezzar, seeking answers in all sources, except the one that can truly help us? This second dream, detailed in Daniel 4, symbolizes God's judgment on Nebuchadnezzar's pride and arrogance. The king dreamt of a great tree that reached the heavens and was visible to the ends of the earth, a tree that was cut down by divine order, leaving only the stump and roots in the earth, bound with iron and bronze. Daniel, once again called to interpret, revealed that the dream was a warning from God to Nebuchadnezzar, alerting him about his pride and predicting that he would be removed from power until he recognized that the Most High rules the kingdoms of men and gives them to whom he will. In this context, we ask, how do we handle the warnings that God sends us? Do we, like Nebuchadnezzar, ignore the signs until the consequences of our actions force us to face reality? And more deeply, how do we respond to our own success and power? Do we see these as the fruits of our own efforts, or do we recognize and thank God for His providence and sovereignty in our lives? Nebuchadnezzar's dream and its interpretation by Daniel teach us about the importance of maintaining humility, regardless of our position or power. It invites us to reflect on the source of our strength and recognize that, without God's blessing and permission, all our achievements are as ephemeral as a tree that can be cut down. May we learn from Nebuchadnezzar's example and always seek the wisdom that comes from God, so we are not just great in our own eyes, but truly wise in the eyes of the Lord. We continue to reflect on Nebuchadnezzar's visions, and today, we delve deeply into the dream of the great tree, which provided shelter and food for all creatures of the earth, but by divine order, was cut down. This dream is not just a portent, it's a powerful metaphor about responsibility, sovereignty, and humility. But what can this dream teach us about our own life and leadership? Imagine for a moment a massive tree, whose branches reach the sky and whose sight extends to the ends of the earth. Under its shade, all creatures find refuge and sustenance. This tree, which in the dream represented Nebuchadnezzar himself and his empire, was a symbol of protection and sustenance. However, the same dream that highlighted its grandeur and utility also announced its destruction. It was said that the tree should be cut down, its leaves and fruit scattered, leaving only the trunk, which was bound with iron and bronze. This vision is rich in symbolism and invites us to reflect on the role we play in the lives of those around us. Do we, like Nebuchadnezzar, see ourselves as indispensable, perhaps even immortal in our influence and power? Or do we recognize that, no matter how grandiose we may appear, we are subject to the will and judgment of God? Daniel interpreted this dream for Nebuchadnezzar with a clarity that resonates through the centuries, warning that the king would be deposed from his throne and live among the wild animals until he recognized that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. Daniel 4 verse 25. This is a lesson about God's sovereignty over human ambitions, reminding us that, no matter how much we build or achieve, everything is under God's domain. As leaders, servants, parents, friends, or in any role we play, we are called to be like the tree that shelters and feeds, but with the humility to know that we are merely instruments of divine will. Are we ready to be that kind of leader? And if we find ourselves cut down, how will we respond? Will it be an opportunity to grow in humility and acknowledgement of God's sovereignty? This dream of Nebuchadnezzar challenges us to examine our hearts and motivations, urging us to strive not only to be great but to be good, just, and humble in the eyes of God. May we learn from the story of this Babylonian king and seek, in all our actions, to glorify the one who truly reigns over everything and everyone. As we move forward in our journey through the book of Daniel, we encounter a central truth that Daniel reveals to King Nebuchadnezzar: no power on earth is absolute, except the power of God. This revelation was not just a warning, it was a divine lesson delivered through a dream that only Daniel could interpret. But what does this mean for us today? How does Daniel's interpretation apply to our modern lives? Daniel, in his God-given wisdom and discernment, explained to the king that the great tree, which provided shelter and sustenance for all life around, symbolized Nebuchadnezzar himself and his vast empire. The dream revealed a disconcerting truth: despite his greatness and power, Nebuchadnezzar would face extreme humiliation. He would be removed from his throne and live among the animals of the field until he recognized that God's sovereignty is above all human kingdoms. This part of the story is particularly impactful because it highlights the human condition from a divine perspective. How often, in our own lives, do we elevate ourselves in our self-sufficiency, forgetting who truly grants periods of power and prosperity? Daniel 4 verse 32 reminds us that the Most High rules over the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Considering Daniel's interpretation, we must ask ourselves, are we ready to accept that, no matter our planning and effort, it is God who establishes and removes kings? How do we react when confronted with the reality that our achievements can be taken away at any moment? Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation serves as a severe, but necessary, reminder of our own vulnerability and the need to recognize God not only as a savior but as the supreme ruler of our lives. It challenges us to reflect on our own pride and self-sufficiency. Are we living in a way that honors God in all our achievements? May Daniel's clarity and wisdom inspire us to seek a more humble heart and to live with full awareness of divine sovereignty. May we learn to depend more on God and less on ourselves, recognizing that, in the end, all that we have and are is by His will and grace. This is not just a lesson for an ancient king, but an eternal truth for all of us who seek to walk under the light of God. We now reach a crucial point in Nebuchadnezzar's story that resonates through the ages as a powerful warning about the dangers of pride and arrogance. Despite being directly warned by God through the dream interpreted by Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar failed to grasp the essence of the divine message. But what can we extract from this tragic failure that not only marked his life but also serves as a perennial lesson for all of us? A year after Daniel's warning, in a moment of carelessness and self-exaltation, Nebuchadnezzar looked over great Babylon and proclaimed, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Daniel 4 verse 30. These words, full of pride, triggered the immediate realization of divine judgment. The Bible tells us that, while the words were still in his mouth, a voice from heaven announced that the kingdom would be taken from him, thus fulfilling the prophecy that he would be humiliated until he recognized that the Most High rules the kingdom of men. This moment of arrogance raises a deep and pertinent question for each of us. Where do we place the source of our success and achievements? Are we, like Nebuchadnezzar, sometimes falling into the trap of viewing our accomplishments as the sole fruits of our effort and talent? And more, how do we respond when confronted with the truth that everything we have is by divine permission and grace? Nebuchadnezzar's fall is a powerful illustration of the biblical truth that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble, James 4 verse 6. It challenges us to examine our own hearts and consider how we handle power, influence, and success. Are we prepared to give glory to God for our achievements, or are we at risk of being humbled by our pride? May the story of Nebuchadnezzar serve as a constant reminder of our need for humility and recognition of God's sovereignty in our lives. May we learn to keep our hearts aligned with God's will, seeking not our own glory, but the glorification of the one who truly reigns over all. May we always be aware that, in the grand scheme of existence, we are but servants of the Most High God, called to reflect His light and love in everything we do. Reflecting on Nebuchadnezzar's trajectory, we come to one of the most dramatic and instructive moments of his life, his humiliation and transformation. After arrogantly proclaiming his own accomplishments as the source of Babylon's greatness, the king suffered a drastic fall not only in status but in his very humanity. But what does this extreme period of humiliation reveal about the nature of divine correction and the possibility of redemption? The Bible tells us that, as a result of his arrogance, Nebuchadnezzar was afflicted by God with a form of madness that made him live like an animal. He was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until he acknowledged that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and sets over them anyone he wishes. Daniel 4 verses 32 to 33. For 7 years, this powerful king lived outdoors, devoid of any human dignity, a physical representation of his spiritual and mental degradation. This extremely humbling experience for Nebuchadnezzar raises several profound questions. Why did God choose this particular method of punishment and lesson? Are there times in our lives when, figuratively, we are reduced to an animal state so that we can learn vital lessons about who really is sovereign? Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation teaches us about the severity with which God can intervene to correct those who stray, but also about His mercy and willingness to restore those who recognize His sovereignty. After those 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar finally lifted his eyes to the heavens, and his reason was returned to him. He praised and honored the Most High, acknowledging that all his acts are true and his ways just, and that he can humble those who walk in pride. Daniel 4 verses 34 to 37. This story invites us to consider how we handle our own periods of humiliation. Do we turn to God only when we are at rock bottom, or do we strive to maintain a humble and grateful heart in all circumstances? Nebuchadnezzar's transformation can be seen as an invitation for all of us to reflect on our own need for spiritual transformation, so we can truly understand and live under the grace and sovereignty of God. May the story of Nebuchadnezzar inspire us to seek genuine transformation in our lives, recognizing and worshiping God not only in moments of crisis but at all times, with a truly humble and grateful heart. Nebuchadnezzar's journey now leads us to a concluding chapter that is as much about restoration as it is about redemption. After 7 years of degraded, animal-like existence, something remarkable happens, something that not only changes the course of Nebuchadnezzar's life but also offers a powerful message about the nature of divine grace and mercy. But what does this restoration tell us about the patience and transforming power of God? After this period of humiliation, where Nebuchadnezzar lived devoid of all human dignity, the Bible tells us he raised his eyes to heaven, and his sanity was restored. He then praised the Most High, finally acknowledging that all the inhabitants of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" Daniel 4 verse 35. With this recognition, Nebuchadnezzar was not only restored to sanity but also to his throne, experiencing even greater majesty than before his downfall. This point in the story raises some crucial questions. Do we only recognize the sovereignty and grace of God when confronted with our own frailty and fallibility? How do we deal with moments in our life when everything seems lost? Do we, like Nebuchadnezzar, need experiences of breaking to truly lift our eyes and hearts to God? Nebuchadnezzar's restoration is a testament to the redeeming power of God, ready to restore and uplift those who humble themselves and recognize His sovereignty. It is a reminder that no matter how low we may have fallen, God's mercy is sufficient to bring us back, not just to our previous position but to an understanding and experience of greatness that transcends all we knew before. May the story of Nebuchadnezzar inspire us to reflect on our own lives and how we are responding to God's calls and corrections. May we learn to humbly accept the lessons He teaches us through our own falls and humiliations, knowing that through these experiences, God is working to bring us to a place of recognition and praise to Him, revealing the true greatness that comes from living a life aligned with His will and purpose. May we, like Nebuchadnezzar, be restored and renewed by the transformative power of God's love and grace. We reach the apex of Nebuchadnezzar's journey, a moment that encapsulates not just a dramatic turn in his personal life but also a powerful demonstration of God's redemptive nature. After years of pride and self-sufficiency, followed by a period of profound humiliation, Nebuchadnezzar reaches a point of recognition and acceptance of divine sovereignty. But what does this act of recognition teach us about the possibility of true and profound change in our own lives? At the end of his ordeal, Nebuchadnezzar not only returns to his former state of power but also undergoes a spiritual transformation, publicly acknowledging not just the sovereignty of God but also His justice and goodness. He declares, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything He does is right and all His ways are just. And those who walk in pride He is able to humble." Daniel 4 verse 37. This moment of acknowledgement raises fundamental questions for all of us. Are we open to such deep changes in our understanding of who God is and how He acts in our lives? Are we willing to admit and abandon our own pride to truly recognize the authority of God over our existence? The possible conversion of Nebuchadnezzar to the true God of Israel challenges us to reflect on the nature of our own faith. Is our faith merely a convenience, something that comforts us, or is it a deep conviction that can survive even the darkest and most humiliating periods of our life? Moreover, how can we, like Nebuchadnezzar, use our own journeys of faith to publicly testify to the goodness and justice of God? May the story of Nebuchadnezzar inspire each of us to seek a deeper and more genuine relationship with God. May we learn to see beyond appearances and material things, recognizing and celebrating God's true sovereignty in every aspect of our lives. And may we, like Nebuchadnezzar, come to a place of humble recognition that God is just, His works are true, and He is indeed capable of transforming the hardest of hearts. And so, my dear viewers, we conclude our epic journey through the life of Nebuchadnezzar, a tale filled with power, humiliation, and ultimately, redemption. We've seen how even a powerful king was shaped by the hands of God, learning that true greatness comes not from what we build or conquer, but from recognizing divine sovereignty. If you've been inspired by this story, if something resonated in your heart or simply piqued your curiosity, I ask you, don't let this journey end here. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future explorations into the rich biblical narratives we still have to share. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and want to help more people find content that enlightens and transforms. And of course, your comment is very valuable to us. Share your reflections, your questions, or even how this story may have touched your life in a particular way. Together, we can continue discovering, learning, and growing in our faith and understanding. So, join our community, participate actively, and let's spread the word about the wonders we find in the Scriptures. Until next time, and may you continue to be richly blessed on your spiritual journey. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and comment. Your interaction makes all the difference, ***. This is more than just a channel, it's a community in pursuit of wisdom and truth. Thank you for being part of this spiritual journey with us. I'm looking forward to reading your comments below.